we also want to invite you to an idea that you might be more than that part of your story. You might be more than a recovering alcoholic. You might be more than a recovering trauma survivor. You might be more than a failed marriage. You might be more than the stress you carried last year when you crashed and burned.
I've been loving what you're doing with Jelly Roll and the OK Project. Could you walk the audience through that and how that came in your consciousness?
Like I'm over 500 pounds and I'm trying to sell 60 tour dates, and I'd like to make some changes. And I had told him I couldn't do it to the level he wanted me to do it. But then when I got into the hood a little bit and stopped just looking at the car, I realized, oh man, this guy might be a generational voice for mental health and addiction.
Welcome back to the Seano Show. I'm your host, Seano McFarland. And before we get started on this amazing episode, can you help a brother out? Please subscribe. Please follow. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Oh boy. My guest today has built one of the most powerful spaces for emotional healing in the world. Miles Adcox is the creator of Onsite, where people from every walk of life, from rock stars to single parents, come to hit pause, peel back the layers, and remember who they really are. He's a truth teller, a safe place, and living proof that vulnerability changes everything. Let's get into it. Welcome, brother.
I've been excited to meet you. We talk about you a lot at the facility. I know my colleagues think the world of you, and I know you're doing great work, so I'm honored to get a chance to talk to you.
You have an incredible gift for compassion, patience. You meet people where they're at. You've mastered the art of active listening. You did not learn that skill set at Yale. Was there a moment where you had that tap out moment? I want to get into what was your tap out moment? Let's just start there because I know we just have an hour.
Well, tap out or tap in, I guess it's both happened at the same time. I was pretty early on, due to a lot of circumstances in my developmental years, I learned a skill, which ended up being a survivor skill, which is to get my needs met through a lot of external validation. So I remember at some of my earlier ages, I used to look outside to try to get my needs met and to get validation. And that sticks with you. It's really tough to shake. But somewhere in my early 20s, I had a breakdown, we'll call it, and that would be my tap out. But then it was really my tap in. It turned out to be the most amazing opportunity in the world to realize that if all I had for fuel was what other people thought about me, then the runway was going to be pretty short. It just got too tiring, which is why I ended up medicating it in a lot of creative ways. But once I unplugged from that strategy and plugged in to who I truly was and who I was becoming, I'd say my whole soul got quiet. And maybe for the first time in my life. Little did I know that it would end up propelling me into this profession, and that I would fall in love with helping people quiet the unnecessary noise in their psyche so that they could begin to hear their own voice and also hear the voices of people that count. But when I began to be able to hear myself, I suddenly just got a spark and knew I wanted to be a voice and an ear for other people. So since then, I have been trying to actively listen everywhere that I can and just provide presence for people who feel a little dysregulated, and ideally support them to get their feet on the ground, just like I had the opportunity to do.
Well, thank you, brother. And so you had that tap in moment. And what was the vision for Onsite? What was going through your head? How did that drop into your consciousness?
When I first got into the mental health space, I started in crisis intervention. So I started out and got certified in several of the modalities and learned how to intervene on people when they were kind of at their worst. And although I fell in love with that work, I started to realize pretty quickly that ideally, what comes on the back of an intervention is a resource, a strategy, and a plan where people go get opportunities to grow, change, and heal. You hope they go to some type of program or something to get some help. And I had a lot of success in trying to get people support and help. But when I started to experiencing these programs and have clients go through these programs, I realized it was unfortunate that people had to have one of those crisis-oriented moments to tap in to who they are and to become more grounded and connected and get a better angle on who they're becoming. And I often thought, what a short-sighted opportunity for the world, that you have to have a big faceplant moment in life to be able to go get to know who you are. I guess go quote unquote to human school and become a better human being. And ideally, when I had that experience, and when a lot of the other people did that experience, I started to flip the way I looked at it. It wasn't this punitive thing that you go fix the broken parts of your story and you should feel really bad that you got there. I started to realize this is one of the greatest opportunities on the planet. I mean, who gets an opportunity to go somewhere for 30 days and become a better human being for it? Improve their relationships, optimize their life, optimize their health. And why is that only reserved for people who have breakdowns? So I became kind of obsessed at that time with how do we make the door wider? Because honestly, I came out of my own experience and other people's experiences, and I thought, how do you usher the whole world through residential treatment? Good residential treatment. I know it's not all created equal, but how do you rush the world through 30 days of checking out of their life, doing a digital detox, getting their feet on the ground? And I always thought, man, could you imagine the collective consciousness that could rise if we all had better opportunities to work on ourselves? That just put a spark in me to want to go and it turned into a little bit of a wildfire. I was just, okay, I've been fortunate to be mentored by some of the great pioneers in the self-development, self-help, psychology and counseling space. And how do we give more people access to this information? So I started looking at the landscape, and I saw that in personal growth at the time, there were people doing seminars for everyday people, like the Tony Robbins and some of those guys that started doing that in the 80s and 90s. But there weren't a lot of people teaching the principles of psychology, counseling, therapy, unless you were on the other end or motivated by some type of problem or crisis. And I wanted to try to see if we could create a space and a place, because I was pretty invested in creating a space, because I had seen what happens when you can get people out of their environment and into a really psychologically safe environment. But I wanted to create a space that allowed everyday people, whether they had a crisis in their life or not, to come get a deeper look at who they are and be able to offload some of the things that don't belong to them so they could just become the best version of they are and optimize their relationships. And I didn't know what that would look like. For years, I thought it might be more like a seminar business, because I just couldn't imagine how you could make that work in a retreat setting. And I thought, well, maybe it's you bring people to you and they stay in a hotel. But I thought, man, we're really missing it if we can't completely get people insulated and connected in that way. So, and I also am a hospitality nerd. I love great hospitality. I mean, good hospitality heals. I wanted to be able to offer that, and it's difficult to offer in a traditional seminar format unless you can take care of people's other needs like lodging and food and things like that. So that's what ultimately sparked the idea of bringing people together in shorter amounts of time, offering services that would be available for anybody, including people in need. And that was the early vision for it.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. Before we get into actually breaking down the program, how long you've been, tell me about some of your great teachers. If there's one you want to highlight or two you want to highlight, I'm so curious that level of tutelage that you had, because you strike me as a very curious human being.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment, because I am. I would say one of the top. If I were to tell you the rest of the Onsite story, I'd have to tell you the history of the origins of what is now Onsite, and it predates me. A lady by the name of Sharon Weichschauder Cruz had a vision, and she's got a wonderful story too. But it's interesting. A lot of great people that came out of the therapy and psychology space, they came out and sold a lot of books, but it was before our world got pop culturized, so most people don't know them. And so mainstream people in our field probably know them, because she was one of the early pioneers of the codependency movement. She was a founding chairwoman of ACOA. She wrote a whole bunch of books back in the day around children of alcoholics and codependency. And she had an initial vision, because she worked with Vernon Johnson of the Johnson Institute, one of the early pioneers, really pioneer of intervention, of what do we do with the rest of the system? We've got a primary patient here that's getting intervened on, and we typically rush them off to a room to try to support them. And then you've got the entire family that's hurting, and they're not getting any attention. So she mentored under a woman by the name of Virginia Satir, who a lot of people probably studied her if you know anything about family systems. And Virginia kind of slated her to succeed a lot of Virginia's work. As a matter of fact, I've been able to read some of Virginia's old journals that Sharon has, which is really powerful. And Sharon, I met her in Tucson, Arizona years ago, and then I followed her on the back end of her career when she was still speaking some. And she had the original vision for a training and education center that would take, ultimately in the beginning, was to take family of alcoholics through some type of education and recovery process themselves. And that really wasn't out there at the time. It was pre-family programs and treatment and all that stuff. And so she was one of my primary mentors and who I consider to be the founder of a lot of what I still carry forward with Onsite. It's a much different company today. We shortened the name down and had a longer name. We did a lot more stuff back then. But her roots are all over our process, and she was a great mentor of mine. So she's still got some great works out there. I would recommend anybody that's looking for a good read to look up Sharon Weichscheider-Cruz.
That's great. Can you give me one of your biggest takeaways from her?
I'll give you a vulnerable takeaway from her. Because what I didn't say was where I met her. I told you I met her in Tucson, Arizona. I didn't tell you where I was. And I was in residential treatment in my early 20s. And there was she was a guest speaker that came through that facility. But before the evening in which she and her husband spoke that night, she toured the dorms, the facilities where the patients and clients were. And I was in one of those. And I was about a week and a half into a residential stay. And like a lot of people who end up going into residential care for mental health or substance use or anything, you don't know what you know until you get there. And thankfully, the stigma has come down significantly in the last 20 years, but we still got a lot of it. But at that time, the stigma was significant. I mean, it was a mountain. Especially in the part of the world I came from, it was just so out of context. I knew nothing about it. I just knew how bad did it have to get for me to end up in a place like this. Quite a mountain shame. I was just really down on myself, and I had not yet turned the corner to see the value and get excited and go forward and do what I've done with my life. I was still in the muck and feeling pretty shameful about having to go somewhere to fix some of the challenges I had. Coming out of my dorm room, about a week and a half in, I see people coming through on a tour. It's the owner of the facility and Sharon and Joe. And I, at that time, had my head on the floor. I wasn't making eye contact with anybody and didn't really want to talk to anybody. But she had this engaging and infectious spirit. And she saw me about the same time that I walked out of my door, and she said, "Hello, young man." And it was the way she invited me into that greeting that brought my eyes off the floor and straight into hers. And it made me feel for some reason like I deserved to be there instead of I had to be there. And I've never forgotten it. And so there's a type of management that I employ, which is walking around. I've never had an office. I really like desk when I'm at Onsite or any of the facilities. I like to walk around, and primarily it's because the influence of Sharon. Because what I do is I'll take meetings on the go, I'll take meetings on walks, but primarily I just don't want to miss opportunity to look people in the eyes at their worst and be able to be a mirror for them, just like she was a mirror for me, and show them that their best is just ahead. She, just with the tone of her voice in that moment, she saw somebody. She saw me. She didn't see me for the way I was seeing me. She didn't see me for the problems I was dealing with at the time. She saw me. She saw deep into my soul. Now, we would go forward and create a great professional mentee-mentor relationship, and she taught me all kinds of clinical acumen and all kinds of cool stuff. But such a beautiful question you ask, and it's why I wanted to go back to the origin of our story, because the very biggest lesson was it never miss an opportunity to look somebody in the eye and show them what they're made of.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'm going to make an assumption here, Miles, that every guest that comes to your amazing facility where they get off a plane or they're coming in is greeted in that spirit. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, we work really hard. We train the transport drivers that pick up at the airport are not just drivers. They're an important part of our hospitality team. And that's where it starts. The minute you engage with our team, we want you to feel warmly received and loved on from the minute we bring you into our process until the minute you depart.
It's beautiful, man. I like women like her, and the angels that cross our paths are powerful. Let's talk about Onsite, the program. When did it actually get started? Where it's located? Would you be so kind to break that down, please?
It's in our primary campus is about 45 minutes west of Nashville, and that's where the majority of our work happened until we started to spread out a little bit. But primarily, that's where the majority of our work continues to happen. Most of our volume comes through our Tennessee campus. It started out on 68 acres. It's right around 300 acres now. We've just added a little acreage over the years as we've gone. Got a beautiful campus that sleeps comfortably about 85, and it's in the rolling hills of Middle Tennessee, just outside Nashville. It's a really beautiful place. It's built around an old 1868 home. It's 5,000 square feet. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of the centerpiece of the property. And then we've got cabins that kind of surround it, and a nice restaurant and some other beautiful spaces. My favorite thing about it, though, is all that's on about 15 acres. But then once you go out of that into the green space, we've got just a beautiful walking trails, and it's an active quarter horse ranch too. I'm an equestrian, so we've got horses on property. Do equine therapy, of course, but we do a variety of different programming. We became kind of known for doing workshops and intensives before a lot of people were doing workshops and intensive. For years, we were some of the only people doing those. And what I mean by those, for people that may not know our insider lingo, is that's just a shorter term therapeutic experience, anywhere from 3 to 5 and sometimes 7 days. And our flagship program is called the Living Centered Program. And it's kind of what it sounds like. It's an incredible program for people who've never looked at their origin story. So a great way of inviting you experientially back into your family of origin story, so that you can take a deeper look at what served you well, understand your imprint, also understand what maybe didn't serve you well, and rewrite any old messages, so that you can kind of clean your narrative a little bit, and then move forward and identify what ways you might be medicating certain parts of your nervous system that might be impacting you from fully living into your story. That's another way to say trauma or emotional trauma work. I don't know. I haven't got a chance to look at all your demographics. I don't know if we're talking to people in our field, insiders, clinicians, therapists, or
all the above.
Okay, cool. That's why I'm trying. I think sometimes I was guilty for years of just using insider language and hoping people could hang on, but I try to neutralize it now for everybody. But yeah, so that family of origin codependency work, emotional trauma work, grief work, I think that's a great catch-all program. If I could get everybody to start with that one, I would love it. Not everybody has that luxury because it's time, resources, and other things. So sometimes we specifically might want to put somebody in a healing trauma program, which is a week-long experience with some of our trauma practitioners. It's powerful too. But yeah, we've got a menu of therapeutic workshops that we offer throughout the year. We're running about 48 weeks out of the year in Tennessee. We set a year annual calendar, and then what we pepper in alongside it are custom curated individual family couples intensives. And those are ones where we work specifically with someone, their story, pair them with people on our team, and then curate a great experience for them, hopefully to be able to heal and change. Those run throughout the year, and we share the campus with one other offering. It's called Milestones, and it's a long-term residential trauma program. And it's 24, 26 beds, somewhere around in there. And it shares space, but it's a separate program altogether. So that's primarily what happens in Tennessee. And we offer some versions of our workshops at our California campus. And then we have a digital offering. We're doing online intensives and workshops, and creating, as of right now, we're starting to film some more emotional wellness masterclasses that will be living in a format. So that's some of what we're up to at Onsite. I don't know if I'm the worst at giving people elevator pitches. I'm not a great.
I don't know about that,
guy.
buddy. I don't know, but I'm gonna just say it once again. The work you guys do there is just extraordinary. I've only had nothing but outstanding discoveries and transformation from clients, and I want to thank you for curating that amazing experience for folks. I know how specific you are, and I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, and probably the secret sauce of being able to offer a product I really stand behind and I'm super proud of is, of course, our team. I should have started there. I started by telling you some of the offerings, but I curate clinical talent obsessively. I love finding really talented change agents. I was going to say clinicians, but I think the letters are just a bonus, honestly. I mean, we got to have those where all of our people are credentialed. I'm really proud of the clinical excellence and integrity that we offer, but it comes second to the people that show up in the room with these people. give people permission up front. It's like these tools are essential, but make sure not lead with them. Lead with your humanity. And so we look for great people. We have an incredible collection of wonderful clinicians around the country and some in Nashville that will fly in and help be a guide for people's stories. And that's been my favorite part, just building wonderful relationships and taking care of them like we would a client when they're on campus.
Miles, how long has that program been in existence now?
I've had the program since 2007. But it predates me. There's elements of it that predate me and go on back. I forget the actual date. Somewhere in like the late 70s when Sharon started doing her original work. So it's got quite a tale of great history and legacy. But a lot of the elements you see today started somewhere around 2007 and 8, and then we added some stuff in 2010. We added some stuff again in 2012. And we're adding some stuff now. So we just kind of, we're slow and intentional. To have a great brand in our space, the way it's been rolled up and consolidated in the last 15 years, there would have been faster paths to growth. We had a lot of interest in people wanting to try to accelerate us. And I'm not saying that wouldn't have been a good idea, because I love the idea of scaling impact. But at the end of the day, we were so obsessed with quality that we decided to keep it at a certain size and make our growth really small and intentional so that we can continue to offer the quality that we all aspire to do.
As a person in the field and a person who runs a facility and being insanely curious, what has been the most difficult part for you, challenging, running Onsite?
Where do we start? I could do a thesis on this one. It's been full of challenges and full of incredible growth opportunities. I would probably say I got started, fairly young, and in your 20s and 30s. The way I define success, I was still dragging some of my pathology along with me because, as you know, we're wounded healers and we get in this space and you just continue to heal and evolve. If you're doing it right, ideally, you get to be a recipient benefit of the work we spend time with. But I made some classic mistakes early on of caring a little bit too much about the image of what we were doing. And that was always a distraction because you just, spend up chasing the wrong things. And I think now, as you mature and season into, you get a different definition of success, where I care more about doing what I want to do, when I want to do it, with the people I want to do it with, and making sure we do that with a lot of pride and a lot of integrity and a lot of grace. And so I'm really I think if I've learned anything in running a program in the behavioral space, it's that if you take a playbook out of history and humanity, if you study things besides psychology like sociology, you realize that good communities are actually what heal people. And if you want to have a really good therapeutic product, you should really obsess about curating community and creating a healthy community. And that alone will buy you so much margin for error, because we're going to get it wrong. It's not a black and white process. It's a very artistic and creative process if you're doing it right. So people are going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes in a variety of ways, clinically, culinary, on down. But if you have the tenets and the foundation of a really organically healthy community, not a perfect community, but just a good community, I guess if the backstage matches out front, then that's success to me. If the culture is really good, that's success. Obviously, you want numbers and you want good business, and if that follows, bingo, that's icing. But the cake to me is, do I feel really good about the people and the place and the offering? And that's kind of the success I would say that has helped us today season well. But the mistakes I made early on was often I'm ADD and I get a little bit addicted to entrepreneurship. So often I'd have too many things going at one time. I'd have 900 workshops and couldn't maintain the quality, couldn't staff them. And then you start reining it back in and you get focused on the ones that really matter. I threw myself too far into it early on and found myself pretty burned out, kind of chasing my career at the cost of me. I made that mistake. And I think that's a really common mistake in our space, because all of us are passive junkies. And, there's easier ways to make a living than doing our work, but we got to love it if you're going to do it. And I fell in love with it to the point where I lost myself in it at times, and I retooled and all those were great steps to who I've become today. But those were some of the classic mistakes I made early on. I couldn't delegate early on. I was terrible at that. Very codependent leader early on. I didn't know how to be clear boundaries. So, like I said, I can go on this one. But there were quite a few.
I appreciate that, man. I really do. You and I share a lot of themes together that are important to us. One is, let's get into the resilience. Let's shift the narrative. Let's get past the sad story. Can you talk to me about your philosophy and your treatment of that in your facility out there?
I really believe that we have two distinct responsibilities with human beings. One of which is to create a safe enough container and invite people alongside you to shine a light in front of them, not try to push them and pull them where we think they need to go, but just shine a light on opportunities for them to evolve and grow and heal and grieve and all the things that we do. And often that requires us to go back into their story. And not always. A lot of times people that are thinking about stepping into trauma work or emotional work, they're terrified of turning over all the rocks. And that's a misnomer. I don't think we don't turn, it's not even called for to turn over all the rocks. But sometimes it is important to look back. And I think some of us, and I made this mistake early on, you get so obsessed with looking back into people's stories and using all the creative tools that we have at disposal to help them resolve certain parts of that. And then we bring them to current day and then we say, okay, good luck. And I have, in the last few years, especially coming out of the pandemic, where I really started to see this narrative accelerate like a wildfire, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about in a minute, was I think if you're not careful and you only help people look in their past and you stop them at current time without opening up doors of what possibilities could be the payoff or the benefit of doing this heavy lift, then you kind of double down on a bit of a victim narrative. And I saw our whole field kind of go through that, to where we were so obsessed as a people for years with the concept of vulnerability. And then when it got pop culturized, thanks to wonderful colleagues and dear friends like Brene Brown, that kind of became superstars overnight with vulnerability talks and wrote great books and did great research and couldn't respect it anymore. I think they were pivotal in lowering some of the stigma about what we all do. But I don't think there were enough of us talking about resilience, which is the question you teed up here, which is, okay, what's the only thing we do to connect with one another is all circle up and talk about our problems. And we're probably going to become more of our problems. And there's got to be more conversation about, well, where do we go from here? So we've really tried to shift it to where often, you know this, people that bounce around therapeutic circles for a long time or recovery circles for a long time, often they know more about all their diagnoses and problems than anybody could. And so much so, they can't even tell you who they are without telling you about all their diagnoses and problems. And we try to stop that right up front and say, it's important. We want to know about your alcoholism or your whatever it is. We want to know about it. We're proud you have a shame-free way to express that. But we also want to invite you to an idea that you might be more than that part of your story. You might be more than a recovering alcoholic. You might be more than a recovering trauma survivor. You might be more than a failed marriage. You might be more than the stress you carried last year when you crashed and burned. And I believe that is where resilience becomes, I think, more than the second step. I think it becomes the key ingredient. Do we teach it the way I want to teach it? Not yet. I think we're really putting a lot of effort into that now. We're really trying to find innovative ways, because I think I'd love to get better at that, if I'm completely honest, as a facility. But I do think we put a lot of attention on it in the last 2 or 3 years, to where we're trying to make sure that aftercare is not just an afterthought. It's still so tough. I've never seen an aftercare plan I just loved, and we do a bunch of them. And I like to be honest. I hope it doesn't scare off people that like what we do. But I think I get nervous with the people that tell you they're great at everything that they do and they do the best aftercare plan in the world. Because if everybody did the best aftercare planning, we'd all have more than 30% of the people that did the aftercare plans, and none of us do.
Yeah, right on. That's a straight up truth.
So I'd love to get more innovative in what's next. How do we spend a little bit more time in where we go from here? Because that's where the greatest gift I've ever gotten from looking at deconstructing my own story and then building back who I am today is that some of the things I used early on in my story, where it was like, well, I've got to create safety, or safe people, safe circle, safe family of choice, all the things. It's like safety. I used to think safety was an internal concept. An external concept. I used to teach it that way. It's like, I didn't get anything to do with safety. Safety's right here. It's wrapped up in this big ball of resilience, and you can just take it wherever you want to go. You can just take it into stressful places, unsafe places, people that typically are going to activate your nervous system, and you still get to be who you are. That's resilience. And I hope that's what we're teaching people.
Beautiful. I think you said, dear brother, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. Can you talk about that? Yeah, let's talk about that. That's a good one.
Thanks, man. Somebody did a little research or homework on you, and I appreciate
Heck
you bringing
dude.
that.
I value a man's time.
I've really tried over the years to simplify complicated change techniques and tools so that it's a more approachable process. I remember my struggle to get back to my faith and my spirituality. And I often wondered why. And I see a lot of people that go through psychological challenges or behavioral challenges also struggle with spiritual challenges, which is why we often deploy a tool early in people's process and give them opportunities to re-engage with some type of spiritual life. Most of us feel like it's important, an important part of the recipe. And I remember trying to re-engage with spiritual life, but I had so much baggage from spirituality kind of gone wrong that it was tough to re-engage. I wanted to avoid it, didn't want to prioritize it or create my own version of it, which ended up being more about me than now who I believe is my God. And I realized it was because it had so much activating language around it, so much insider speak, that I couldn't ever get to the purity of the message without wading through everything I thought I should know about it and learned about it on the way up. And I realized our lane can be the same way if we're not careful. I think there's quite a bit of dogma in therapy circles, and we can get really attached to the model that we think works, the one we've been trained in. And if we're not careful, we're over prescribing that language to people who have no context for it. And many people have been hurt by counseling and therapy too. And often it's difficult to build that bridge unless we get creative and neutralize the language. And that's what led me to exactly what you said earlier. I started thinking, okay, what is this really about? What are we really trying? This is back when I was working in a residential treatment center, even prior to Onsite. What is this really about, addiction? What do we do? You could say, well, and I've said this before too, that I've never met somebody with addiction that didn't have chronic stress or trauma on board as well. That used to be super controversial. It's not as much anymore, but it used to be really controversial because you had the addiction faithful, the old school addiction folks that said you can't treat trauma alongside addiction. Then you had the new growing field of the trauma folks that said you can't treat addiction without treating trauma. And then there was the cat of the mouse, like which one do you do first and when do you do it? And nowadays people are realizing there's more of a holistic approach and that everybody's a little different. The timing needs to be curated individually, ideally, and not a factory line. But that was a long way for me to say that was how I arrived at the concept. If you strip it all back, people are feeling disconnected from who they are. They're just feeling disconnected from who they are and isolated from other people in the world. Even the most social people, the most plugged in people can be lonely, disconnected, and not know who they are. And when that happens, one of the first things we do is experience anxiety, we experience depression. And one of the most common things we do with anxiety and depression is we need to regulate, numb, or medicate that. And we do that with substances, alcohol being one of them, addiction being one of them, food being one of them. That's often where we go. And so you had to kind of follow a trail there, was like, okay, if addiction's up here, what's underneath it? Well, what's underneath that? Well, what's underneath that? And when I got all the way down to the base, it was like, man, people just feel disconnected. And if we could help people get re-anchored and reconnected to who they are, they're twice as likely to be able to connect with other people. And if they can connect with other people, they're going to be able to connect with the world in a little different way and maybe won't need the lubricant to feel okay in their own skin.
Yeah, right on, man. Beautiful. Let's talk about, I've been loving what you're doing with Jelly Roll and the OK Project. Could you walk the audience through that and how that came into your consciousness? It's incredible, man.
Yeah, Jelly he's just a unique guy. I got to meet him. I work in the entertainment space as well and bring a lot of our tools into the entertainment world in addition to helping people when they're going through challenges, also do performance coaching and some other stuff in the space. And so we run in similar circles, and I'd gotten to know him a little bit socially. But he had reached out to me. He had some big goals. He was starting to had a couple songs just go crazy, and he was the rocket ship. The fuse started to get lit, and he was just not in a place that he felt like could sustain the journey he was getting ready to go on. And he called me. He's talked about this a lot publicly, which is why I can talk about it. But he's like, I'm over 500 pounds and I'm trying to sell 60 tour dates, and I'd like to make some changes. And so I often will come alongside people, not as their therapist, but as a coach or a consultant, to help them reformat their team, their life, their environment, their surrounding. And so I initially engaged with him to help him do that. And I didn't have time, honestly. I didn't have time to lock in with one client because I advise a whole bunch of camps and lots of artists. And I had told him I couldn't do it to the level he wanted me to do it. But then when I got under the hood a little bit and stopped just looking at the car, I realized, oh man, this guy might be a generational voice for mental health and addiction. I really think
Miles, what was that moment? Was it a song? Was it a look? Was it a conversation? What was that moment for you, man, where you said this cat's onto something?
It was the Houston Rodeo in March of 23, which was his biggest ever show. They do like 10 or 12 dates with massive artists every year in every genre. And you're playing to, I forget the number, 80 something thousand people. So it's bigger than most stadiums. And that was the first time outside of award shows I'd ever seen him do an entire set. And I saw him get up there and start to tell parts of his story, tell parts of his redemption story, tell parts of his struggle story. It wasn't that he was saying something that I hadn't heard other artists say before. That wasn't what got my attention. What got my attention was I started watching the people. And I started watching how they responded to him. And I started watching how he turned an entire stadium into a safe, like recovery circles that we sit in there. I was going to say church, whatever, plug in what he turned it into a spiritual experience. And I thought, not only is he a brilliant artist and a great creative, he's a brilliant orator. And what my favorite thing about his orator ability, or him as a speaker, is that he is uneducated but wicked smart. Knows as much, but it's all come through street knowledge and reading. I've spent a lot of time incarcerated, so he got to read a whole lot of stuff. But he picked stuff up really quickly. But he was using complex concepts in a vulnerable way with street language, and it just connected right to the heart of the people. It felt congruent. It felt authentic because it was authentic and congruent. And when I saw that, and I saw him move an entire arena full of people, not a few people. Usually if you get up there and you tell a little bit part of your story and you do a testimony, a few people are going to connect to it and others are waiting on the song they want to hear. He stopped everybody in their tracks. And I said, if he can do that with 80,000 people, what could he do with millions? And I just got invested. And we got to be good friends outside of the work that we do together. And I'm so proud of him. He's down 220 pounds. He's really revolutionized himself emotionally, physically. He's done it the hard way. He hasn't done any of the shortcuts. He's really put the work in. But more than that, it's what he's doing with his influence is a number one mission. He realizes it's more than music. I want to go make a change. I want to make the unseen feel seen. I want to give hope to the hopeless. And I love what I do at Onsite. I always will. And I've got a foundation. I get to work with people, a more diverse population that doesn't necessarily have the means, but who we're reaching now is people I never thought I'd be able to reach. And we're doing because a lot of the people that are part of the demographic that will come to concerts and other events that we do, they're coming for the same reason people come to me or maybe you. They're searching for hope. They're going through a very difficult part of their story. And here's this artist that has redeemed his story and now has found international success. And they are looking for him as for ministry in a way. And he's stepping into that moment and doing the best he can to provide hope. And I watch people leave these experiences. And his first big tour, did a 58 city tour. Was it last year? I'm losing track of time. It was last year. And he had some of the most successful managers and producers and choreographers across all the industry in the room to design and create this tour. And he put me in the middle of that. He said, I want a mental health guy in here. I want you to create what you create at Onsite in this arena. And he let me kind of build into that. And we did some really unique, cool things throughout the entire set. I mean, we turned the lights up at one time and the whole place finds a stranger to hug. And we just did stuff you don't really see at concerts. We started off the show with, I wrote a kind of an invitation into the experience that we hoped that they would experience. And it was a language that we'd use every day in a therapy room. I tried to neutralize a little bit, but then we had this crazy dream. We were like, what if we could get Morgan Freeman to be the voice of God to say this over the loudspeaker right before you come out? And the head of CAA was in the room when we were saying that. He was like, I represent Morgan. So what do you know? Next thing you know, Morgan Freeman is the voice of God speaking my words into an arena full of people. And then Jelly would go up there and just knock their socks off and love them and pour into them. And so it was it's been a beautiful experience. And the reason I've anchored in with him so much and we're creating this OK project is I saw he wrote kind of a song with a couple other buddies that ended up being a little bit of a mental health anthem. It's called I'm Not Okay. And I watched it grow. I watched it start when people didn't know it. And then I watched it end where nobody didn't know it and went number one. And it's been a beautiful thing. And we got together to start. We also stopped at 50 something jails on that tour. We tried to match the number of arenas we were going to with the number of jails and juvies we were stopping by to pour into people. And we realized the benefit of him coming into spaces like that was just checking on people and making sure they were okay. And that's what we wanted to do with the OK Project, is create a vehicle and a format to offer really good resources to the people who don't typically get resourced. Check on people, make sure they're okay, encourage them, and give them a little hope. So that's what the OK Project's all about.
Oh, it's an incredible project, and I encourage everyone. We'll put all the stuff down, the songs, the projects you're doing, support that. Listen, I've been sober 38 years. I've been blessed to be in this field. I've worked with you with a lot of great people. I've been in partnership with Tony Robbins. The guys that are really free and are having a blast in life, they just know that there's one thing they must do. They must always give it back times 1,000. And when I'm watching the videos of you guys out there, I'm like, what I'm feeling, we are so blessed. Let's just pour people with love and kindness and grace. Let's do some crazy stuff. Let's turn the lights on. Let's pray a different way. And let's just shake these motherfuckers up. And I just applaud you for that, man, because it's a real fucking get down for me. I use bad words sometimes, but I don't know. That's just the way I am, But I love that. But would you talk about that, if I'm speaking correctly, if that makes sense for you, the impact when you have that gift and keep that gift, besides the gift of sobriety, that you must be on the firing line and giving it back that way, please?
I thought when I got into my space that I give back every day. We work in a business that helps people resolve challenges in their story and become better versions of who they are. And I felt like that's a pretty noble run. But if you're not careful, after a while, if that's all you do with your time, then it'll turn into a job. Mm-hmm. And it's not that the job is still not doing good things. It's just if I'm not tapped into any other service opportunities for humanity outside of the thing that I run or the thing that I do, if it's in the helping profession, I think we're missing this great opportunity for this other part of our soul to not just come alive, but to stay alive. So I've always wanted to get creative. I think some of the best service work in the world, because half the jails we went into, we never had a camera. Nobody will ever know we were in there. And I think some of the best is done without anybody knowing. But I think sometimes if you can accelerate it, then you can ripple it. If you can try and take some swings and do some things outside, because I've gotten criticism too, from publicly being involved with people that the old guard would be like, wait a minute, if you have any type of engagement with them on a professional level, you should never be friends with them or have any social setting. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. That's why I'm not as there. I could justify it, but I don't even want to justify it anymore. It's like, I hear you. And I think I'm impacting more people in one night than I might in my whole career in Onsite. And that, I'm just sorry, but that outweighs it. I want to keep pouring fuel on that because it's doing a lot for me, and I think it's doing a lot for other people. And I think if we can find a rhythm where it's a reciprocal opportunity for me to stay grounded spiritually, knock some doors down, try to change a few lives, and it's benefiting some other people, I think it's a worthwhile pursuit.
Heck yeah, never stop that, man. Right on. If one comes to mind, give me your biggest transformation story, that one that you like to talk about, the one that you think about the most, if there is one. I know there's been hundreds.
This will be outside of not really. I mean, Onsite, I've got a foundation called the Onsite Foundation, and we try to use some of our expertise an experience to go pour into other NGOs and nonprofits at times. And before I had kids, before I got married, I went on a wild few-year run where I went to some of the hottest spots in the country in terms of danger around the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, DRC, Mogadishu, Somalia. And these were NGOs or nonprofits that were working with war-torn regions to help either educate, feed, or support kids or women who've been exposed to gender-based violence. And then what would happen was a lot of these efforts were falling short because the kids were so, well, they didn't know. They were wondering, the scores, we got good teachers, we got good resources, but the kids don't seem to be able to learn. It was like, well, they're living in active trauma. So unless the teachers can be trauma informed and help them find ways to stay grounded, it'd be difficult for them to learn. So I got to go and do some of that work. And one of the places was supporting one of my really good friends, has a great place that does neat work around Uganda, northern Uganda, different places in Africa. But he has kind of carved out a little niche to work with witch doctors in northern Uganda. It's a really creepy, interesting group of people. I got a chance to go speak to a room full of witch doctors that were graduating from a year-long program to try to rebuild their life and to give up some of the ways. We weren't trying to change their mind about everything, but child sacrifice, some of the gnarly stuff they get into, we were trying to change that narrative. But I never will forget, we were in this old building that had no heat and air, and it was just no windows. But we were able to secure, and we were trying to emulate a graduation, and I was kind of giving a graduation talk, a commencement talk. Nobody in the audience but the people who were commencing. And I was like, what do you say? What's a white dude from Tennessee say to these Ugandan witch doctors? And I just decided to share my story, the story you and I probably shared in anonymous circles before, and be real. Would they connect to that? I didn't think the details. No, it's a completely different life. Did they connect with struggle and vulnerability and pain and grief and loss? Absolutely. And it was really at the end, it wasn't what I said or seeing any kind of miraculous moment when I had the mic. It was when I sat down, my buddy had things to say, but when they got ready to get their diploma, they had cap and gowns on. They were so excited because most of them had never read or write. They'd never been able to read or write or done anything, and they had learned how to read as part of this experience. We found some kazoos, and we were playing pomp and circumstance on kazoos. And in that moment, I saw sheer joy on these grown men's on their face. I saw their eyes light up, and I saw hope come alive in ways that I didn't even think was possible. And I was sitting there playing a kazoo in the middle of northern Uganda. It was just an experience I'll never forget. I don't know why that's the one that popped up. I've had a lot of amazing experiences watching people transform, but that one was one I think that transformed me.
Oh, that's beautiful. And ironically, perhaps someday over a good meal, we'll talk. I've worked extensively in northern Uganda with children's soldiers, so I know exactly the folks you're talking about. That's beautiful.
Goodness, we got to connect on that.
Yeah, man. So we got a couple minutes. I'm going to do just a couple of rapid fires, and I'll let you get back to all the great healing you've probably got planned today. One belief you've completely changed your mind about.
Vulnerability is weakness.
One habit or ritual you won't compromise on.
Family comes first.
What love feels like when it's healthy.
Messy.
The hardest truth you've had to tell yourself.
I'm enough.
Yeah. Go on that a little bit, buddy. Let's tell me more about that. Tell me about Miles is Enough.
When you carry the backpack I carried for so many years, and then you start to see some of your labor take root, you start to see it start to make an impact. It's almost impossible. It was for me, for that old imposter not to creep back in. And every time it raises another level. It's like, okay, wait, you're at a level, you're operating here. Which means, and what I mean by another level is I'm influencing more people, or I'm around interesting people. We're doing something even more interesting or more cooler. I get that voice continues to go, you're a little bit outside, you're a little bit over your skis, buddy. And you're going to be found out. You're going to find out you don't know what you're doing or what you're talking about. And you probably ought to stay back in your lane. You were doing a great job running Onsite and sitting in the furnace 6 days a week. Why don't you go back there? So
There you go.
that truth, I have to face that hard truth every day. It's like I'm stepping into my divinity. It's where I'm supposed to be, and I'm supposed to be in this room. I'm supposed to be in this space, and I'm enough, and I'm gonna be okay. That's the truth I have to face every day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Final thoughts, buddy, to the person that you and I both know who's struggling, who's scared, depression setting in, maybe, thinking about, does it make sense to be on this planet anymore? What's the message for them right now? What's the first step? What do you recommend? What kind of love do you want to send out to them right now?
You're likely feeling a little bit alone in your pain, and there's going to be well-intended people who are going to come along and tell you you're not alone. And those people used to drive me crazy because I felt alone. So why are you telling me I'm not alone? So I want to say, I know what it's like to be alone in your pain. I also know what it's like to start to get okay with that pain enough that I could start to look at it, enough that I then could start to share it on a piece of paper. And then I was able to share it with one other person. And that one other person turned into a group of people, that turned into a community of people, that now turned into the world. And I have no shame about my pain story anymore because I share my pain story, and I've been able to grow and heal from it. And I don't want to change it because I'm a better person. And I don't expect that you follow my playbook because you got your own playbook. You can't see it yet, but I promise you it's in there. Anybody that comes in and tries to advise you without loving you, be weary. If somebody comes in and loves you and looks in the eye and said, I know what it's like, I've been there. It does feel like it's alone. But there is hope to rebuild your story, and you are 100% worth it. Just the truth I have to tell myself every day, I'm going to tell you right now. You're enough, and the world needs you, and I can't wait to see what you do with the rest of your story.
Amen, buddy. Godspeed, buddy. Thank you so much. This has been a real blessing, man. The Seano Show is a production of iHeart Podcasts, hosted by me, Seano McFarland, produced by Pod People and 28th Ave. Our lead producer is Keith Carnelek. Our executive producer is Lindsay Hoffman. Marketing lead is Ashley Weaver. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.